Today is Good Friday, and so I want to offer some encouragement to you on this day. My name is Heather, and I am the worship arts leader at FCCO. So we've been thinking and reflecting on the amazing miracles, events that happened while Jesus was ministering, while he was walking on this earth, things that created awe and celebration and joy. I can imagine cheers of praise as people experienced firsthand the miracles that Jesus displayed. The blind man that was able to see, the thousands that were hungry who received a meal on the hillside, or the sick and dying girl that Jesus healed, or the paralytic that was placed before this large crowd in a small house that was able to pick up his mat and walk, or the woman at the well that receives forgiveness, or Lazarus walking out of the tomb. And this last Sunday we were just singing, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," as we reflected on the events of Jesus' triumphal entry. But quickly this awe, this joy, the celebration turned quickly into darkness. His closest friends turned their back on Jesus, and Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Shouts of praise turned to shouts of hate that said, "Crucify him." Hearts learning as Jesus preached in the synagogues turned jealous of the power that Jesus was able to display. Palm branches that were waving in his honor turned into waving clubs and swords at his arrest. Times of ministry turned into times of flogging, beating, sneering, whipping, chains, ropes, spitting, and nails, and intense pain and suffering as he carried this heavy wooden splintered cross and was raised for crucifixion. So it was said that Jesus, at 33 years old, after spending 3 years in intense ministry, died around 3 p.m. on Good Friday. Just last night, he was with the friends that he loved the most and the ones that he spent the most time with. He washed their feet. He kept teaching, although they didn't truly understand. He loved them, and he poured out this love over them. And then soon after that meal, he was arrested. His suffering was terrible, and his friends each turned away that night. They acted as if they didn't even know him. It was dreadful. It was like hell in those moments. To spend a hot afternoon raised up on the cross after you've been nailed to it. It was a rocky hill, and I'm sure the heat of the day just intensified the pain that he was feeling. And then the people jeered and sneered and taunted at him, and there were some that you could hear their weeping. And he was covered in his own blood, in excruciating pain, unable to take a breath, and just waiting for that last breath. Yet, in that moment, and in gentleness, he says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And as the criminals on each side of him that were also being crucified, he tells them, "I tell you today, you will be raised with me in paradise." And then, all of a sudden, there was sudden darkness. And his words roared and sliced through silence of that moment. And his eyes lifted to the heavens. And he says, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." The rocks were rumbling, tombs were bursting open, and stones were being split in half. And in the temple, this curtain that separated people from God was torn into two. This is intense. In that moment, those that were there, gawking at Jesus' nearly naked body, said, "Surely, this man is the Son of God." So what's good about this? This is pretty terrible. Why do we call this Good Friday? What's so good about what we've just heard from Scripture? How can torture and excruciating death give us a day that's called Good Friday? This is where we need to listen closely. we must understand something so incredibly important. God's perfect plan to be with us, his children, was riddled with sin all throughout time. We can read story after story of God's people trying to get right with God. But in our sinfulness, we can't get near to him unless we offer a sacrifice. We cannot get near to God because our sin is crimson red. Every time I've read through the Old Testament, I'm overwhelmed. I could never get the steps right. I could never offer enough sacrifices. I could never be pure enough to enter into God's holy presence the way I am. And even though they gave us a path in the Old Testament, I'm not sure I could get it right. My sin is deep. There are places that aren't pure, places that don't deserve to be in the holy presence of God. But can't you see that's part of this plan? This is the culmination of God's plan to save all people. This is the day where sins were taken away. And this man Jesus who died on the cross, this can only be relevant to us and have meaning to us if we can understand the bad news of our own sin. The things that we do that are wrong. So maybe we should call it Bad Friday, or some have said Sorrowful Friday. Some have even said God's Friday. This day, the sacrifice brings us relief. Jesus has taken our spot. Good Friday isn't good because of what happens today. Good Friday is good because of what happens on Sunday. Today, Friday, is where the wrath of God against sin poured out on Jesus. He had taken the punishment for me and for you. So today, let's reflect on this. Reflect on what Jesus has done. We can spend time in prayer. We can spend time in worship. We can pray. We can fast. And today, we can know that Jesus cleansed you and he's cleansed me. It is a death blow against evil. Today is a death blow against sin. And it's God's glorious, good plan to save and redeem the world. To save me and to save you. So let's look forward to Sunday. And I have a short chorus that I want to sing with you. From the song At the Cross. It's one that I know our FCCO family knows. At the cross, I surrender my life. I'm in all of you. I'm in all of you. Where your love ran and my sin washed away. I owe all to you. I owe all to you, Jesus. Sunday is coming.